It seems appropriate, given the shit show that has been 2020, that the US presidential election should turn into a chaotic mess. Not that it should have. I believe it's clear that Joe Biden has won. Now, I expect if you are a diehard Trump supporter that believes the election was stolen, or a QAnon conspiracy theorist, and there's a lot of overlap between those two groups, you're not going to like this video. You might already be feverishly tapping away on your keyboard after you heard me say it's clear Joe Biden won. This is the likely final electoral college map. Biden winning comfortably by 306 electoral college votes to 232, which of course is the exact same margin Trump won by in 2016 when he falsely claimed it was a landslide. It was not a landslide. Neither is the 2020 result. This is what a landslide looks like. Here's another one. And another one. And one more for good measure. Trump is now desperately flailing about with all kinds of wild, unsupported allegations of voter fraud. It should be said that in every election there are always cases of electoral fraud, but the scale of fraud needed to flip this election in Trump's favour is extremely unlikely, to put it mildly. At the latest count, the Trump campaign legal team has launched a dozen lawsuits in several states and at the federal level, and one by one they're being thrown out. And no, it's not some deep state conspiracy. There's just no there there. The cases are light on evidence and sloppily presented. It's sad that Rudy Giuliani, who has a proud legacy of public service, may now be remembered more for his pathetic attempt to represent the Trump campaign in Pennsylvania. Apparently, during the hearing, Giuliani forgot the name of an opposing lawyer, misstated the name of the presiding judge, and mistook the meaning of the word opacity. More importantly, it seems Giuliani didn't understand the meaning of strict scrutiny, the highest of three standards used by judges to evaluate how a law or action taken by the government affects someone's constitutional rights. Strict scrutiny is a basic concept taught to aspiring lawyers and constitutional law classes. I've never seen an election lawyer handle a case as poorly as Giuliani has. The idea that the lawyer arguing the most important case in Pennsylvania would not understand what it means to apply the standard of strict scrutiny in a constitutional case is mind-boggling. This is how Giuliani will be remembered, not as a guy that helped bring down the mob, but as a meme. Two sets of lawyers have now withdrawn from representing the Trump campaign in Pennsylvania, where they sought to block that state from certifying its election results. A law firm representing the Trump campaign in Arizona also withdrew from proceedings in that state. One argument I've seen circulating on social media goes as follows. Since it took 37 days for Al Gore to concede in 2000 as lawsuits originating from Palm Beach County's ballot fiasco worked their way to the Supreme Court, we should wait to see how all these lawsuits from Trump shake out. But to claim these situations are similar is stretching credulity. Yes, the Trump campaign has the right to launch legal challenges and demand recounts where results are close, but the 2000 election came down to approximately 500 votes in one single state. Trump would need to flip several swing states where he is tens of thousands of votes behind, and in one case more than 100,000 behind. In Pennsylvania, he's more than 80,000 behind, Michigan more than 150,000 behind, Arizona a little more than 10,000, Georgia about 13,000, and as I'm writing this on November 21st in Australia, November 20th in the US, the Georgian Secretary of State and Governor, both Republicans, have just certified the result in favour of Joe Biden after all 159 counties conducted a hand count of the total 5 million votes cast. The lead counsel that fought George Bush's legal battle for the presidency in 2000 said that it was entirely different from now, when there basically is no problem, and nobody looking at it legitimately, including a lot of Republicans, thinks there is a problem. There's no problem that's a defect of the ballots, or that's any kind of fraud. It's kind of a manufactured issue. Benjamin Ginsburg, national counsel for the Bush campaign in 2000 and 2004, said Trump's legal strategy has been an unusual and remarkably innovative effort to litigate the election results. Read between the lines there. And Don McGahn, who was appointed by Bush to the Federal Election Commission in 2008 and later served as White House counsel in the Trump administration, quipped Wednesday that you need a legal violation to go to court. These are desperation moves by a person who sees litigation as just another tool of doing business. I don't think any of this litigation is going to go anywhere. And so far, he's right. It is going nowhere. As the court challenges fail one by one, the Trump campaign's latest Hail Mary seems to be to pressure state and local officials. Michigan State House leaders met with President Trump at the White House Friday afternoon. Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey and Michigan House Speaker Lee Chatfield said in a joint statement that they have not been made aware of any information that would change the outcome of the election in Michigan. As legislative leaders, we will follow the law and follow the normal process regarding Michigan's electors, just as we have said throughout this election. Michigan's certification process should be a deliberate process free from threats and intimidation. Allegations of fraudulent behaviour should be taken seriously, thoroughly investigated, and if proven, prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And the candidates who win the most votes win elections and Michigan's electoral votes. These are simple truths that should provide confidence in our elections. That tactic doesn't seem to be working for the Trump campaign either. The latest figure that has publicly debased themselves with claims of widespread fraud is Trump campaign lawyer Sidney Powell. This comes from Reason. Her claims emanate from what are essentially conspiracy theories about a vote-rigging scheme allegedly perpetrated by Democratic Party operatives and Dominion Voting Systems, a company that manufactures electronic voting machines and their software. Those allegations have been percolating through the right-wing fever swamps for days, but on Thursday afternoon they were given a full endorsement by Sidney Powell, one of Trump's top election lawyers, who sketched out a massive conspiracy that stretches far enough to include Hugo Chavez, the former Venezuelan dictator who's been dead since 2013. What we are really dealing with here and uncovering more by the day is the massive influence of communist money through Venezuela, Cuba, and likely China in the interference of our elections here in the United States. Later, she said Trump had actually won the election by a landslide before as many as 7 million votes were switched electronically to President-elect Joe Biden. While discussing Powell's press conference on Thursday night, Fox News host Tucker Carlson said the allegations, if proven, would constitute the single greatest crime in American history. He's probably right, but as Carlson went on to point out, the allegations are a long way from being proven. In fact, Powell has rebuked his offer to bring forward the evidence of these explosive claims. I'm not going to go through it, but I will link this article debunking many of Powell's claims. Thankfully, at least some Republicans have had enough and are starting to call bullshit. Among them are Senators Mitt Romney and Susan Collins. Senator Ben Sasse summed it up best in a statement to the Washington Post, pointing out the obvious disconnect between what Trump's legal team is saying at press conferences and what they're saying in courtrooms. When Trump campaign lawyers have stood before courts under oath, they have repeatedly refused to actually allege grand fraud because there are legal consequences for lying to judges. Sasse said the Trump team's wild press conferences erode public trust, and he called on Trump's attorneys to stop pressuring electors and state officials to refuse to certify the vote counts in Michigan. So here's what you're expected to believe from the Trump campaign right now. That the Democrats, in cahoots with a software company, cleverly orchestrated millions of votes to be flipped in Biden's favour, but they somehow forgot to do that down ticket to secure the Senate and prevent them from losing, on net, a seat in the House. This is conspiracy theory territory, and if you believe it, well, you've been sucked in. Now, on some level, I can understand this reaction, and in fact, some ways was predictable. After all, many Democrats and the bulk of the mainstream media have been trying to undermine the results of the 2016 election for going on 4 years. Hillary Clinton has never really accepted the results and still runs around claiming it was stolen by the Russians rather than admit reality. And that reality was that she was a terrible candidate that represented the worst of the political establishment. But, and I am loath to give Clinton any credit, but she did begrudgingly, the day after the election, concede, something Trump has not done. And again, this shouldn't be entirely surprising. It's not like Trump hasn't showed you who he is over the past 4 years. If you want to understand what drives Trump, it's not racism and sexism as some will have you believe, it's primarily self-interest. And the characteristic he prizes most, among others, is loyalty. Show Trump loyalty and he'll put his arm around you and sing your praises, no matter what your skin colour or the shape of your genitalia. If you go against him, he'll quickly disavow you and throw you under the bus. When you understand Trump that way, you can make sense of his behaviour. That's not to condone his behaviour, it's simply understanding it. And when you understand his number one priority is himself and his own interests, you can understand why he doesn't care about breaking political norms, and he doesn't care if he burns down the Republican Party on his way out. Speaking of the Republican Party, it's not all bad news. It looks like they may hold on to the Senate. That will be decided by 2 runoff elections in Georgia in January. Also, identity politics lost, with Republicans increasing their vote share amongst minorities to a level not seen in decades. Much to the chagrin of woke identitarians, it turns out that people don't want to be simply defined by their racial and ethnic identities. The big question is whether they'll be able to hold on to those gains post-Trump. The message of this election appears to be that enough people had their fill of Trump and wanted him gone, but they didn't give Democrats a clear mandate by their reluctance to follow through down-ballot. There was no blue wave. Perhaps that's because they hear radical rhetoric like defund the police, see Democrats that are sympathetic to that cause, and witness the riots in places like the Democratic-run shithole that is now Portland, and think to themselves, well, I don't like Trump, but I don't want my city to turn into the next Portland either. There are other wins for the American people, a clean sweep, as Nick Gillespie puts it, of various initiatives to legalise medical and recreational weed in Arizona, Mississippi, Montana, New Jersey and South Dakota. Washington, D.C. voters, by a margin of 3-1, voted to make the use, possession and cultivation of entheogenic plants and fungi such as psilocybin mushrooms law enforcers' lowest priority. And Oregon passed initiatives to legalise psilocybin and to eliminate the possibility of jail time for possessing small amounts of narcotics, including heroin and cocaine. But as independent journalist Andy No keeps reminding us by posting mugshots of rioters in Portland, the last thing they need is better access to drugs. California rejected Proposition 16 to reinstate affirmative action, and Democrats rejected the most woke and elected the most moderate Democrat they could find, albeit with not all his faculties intact. The real question is how far Biden will go to embrace the woke radical wing of the Democratic Party, or whether he listens to what the voters appear to be saying and tack more towards the middle. What a Biden presidency will bring is a subject for a whole other video, but suffice to say, for people like me that are small L libertarians that believe in limited government and maximum freedoms, it won't be pretty. And the woke revolution that is poisoning institutions and corporations is likely to steamroll ahead. Now, if you want to fill up the comments sections with your what about this piece of electoral fraud evidence, let me head off a few of those and save you the time. Sharpiegate. Voters in Maricopa County, Arizona were forced to vote using Sharpie pens that aren't read by voting machines. Nope, false. Don Jr. retweeting a claim that Wisconsin's voter turnout was a record 89%. Nope, not even close. Voter turnout was in line with previous elections. That the Trump administration put secret watermarks on official ballots to trick cheating Democrats. Nope, false again. That Biden received a sudden influx of nearly 140,000 votes in Michigan. Nope, sorry. Dominion voting systems deleted 2.7 million Trump votes. Nope, just more bullshit. Here's an article in Forbes detailing many other supposed fraud claims, all debunked. Look, I get it. Your guy lost and you'd rather that not be the case, but don't just accept anything that conforms to your confirmation bias. Type in any of these claims in the browser of your choice, followed by the words fact check or debunked. That is, of course, assuming you are open to hearing all the evidence. As usual, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you next time.